channel, Mark here from PowerSonic. This video is more for homeowners or occupiers of domestic property more specifically, and it's just dealing with the age-old problem of RCDs that operate due to an earth fault. So I'm going to run through a consumer unit and explain to you the things you can do to try and solve that problem yourselves before you engage the help of an electrician. So I hope you find it useful. Please like and subscribe and see what you think, leave a comment, and that would be lovely. Enjoy! Okay, so here you can see a consumer unit with a number of RCBOs. Now these look very similar to the MCBs, but if we actually go in a little bit closer, you can see there's a test button at the top there. So a very basic way to tell as an end user if these things have RCD protection in, so earth fault leakage protection, is if there's a test button on the top there. And you'll see here these circuits are all named, so we've got from the hob all the way along to the boiler at the end. And what essentially happens if there is a trip is it'll be down like that, and you can see there's a zero there. I mean, we determine that as called open. You might refer to it as tripped, disconnected, off, whatever you like. Basically, there's been something happen in the circuit that's caused the breaker to operate, be it due to overcurrent or because of an earth leakage. We'll assume in this instance, talking about RCDs in particular, that it's down to earth leakage. Now that can be for a number of reasons, but primarily it's usually down to a piece of connected equipment. So if, for example, your lights had tripped, a common find is that it'd be an exterior light due to either weather ingress or some sort of insects that have decided to make a home in there, spiders for example. And that's one of the first places to go and look for a flooded PIR detector or a lamp holder that's outside and had some water into it. And if that's not the case, then obviously you need to start looking a little bit further. But in this particular layout where you've got RCBOs, it's much easier to fault find than on a split load consumer unit. And we'll talk about the split load consumer units a bit later on. But for the moment, with these ones, fairly straightforward. So before you get to the point of contacting an electrician, for example, if the socket circuits have tripped, opened and are off, that will be down to something you've got plugged in most likely. So the first thing to do is, with the breaker in the off position, so opened, go around that particular socket circuit and unplug absolutely everything. Don't just switch the sockets off. Most socket outlets are single pole, so they don't actually disconnect the neutral. So if you've got a neutral and earth fault, just turning the plug top off at the actual socket front won't clear the fault. So you have to physically go around and disconnect everything in there so that it's physically removed from the socket outlet. There are sometimes a few little bits that can catch you out. So for example, the boiler could be spared off the socket circuit, or a security alarm. Even some outside lights can be wired from switch fuse spares. Garage roller doors, in the kitchen especially, you may have a bank of isolating switches somewhere that would do a microwave or a dishwasher or a washing machine. It's really important that you find those isolators and turn them off. So any switch fuse spares, double pole isolators, turn them all off. Once you're happy that everything is either unplugged or switched off, the switch fuse spare fuse connection units, usually a double pole, that's the intention of their switching capability. So ideally they will be. In the case that they're not, you're kind of stuck. You could go to the point of trying to get to the plug tops that would connect into the below counter plug sockets if that is the case, or obviously that's something like a security alarm. You're not going to be able to do that. So you just go as far as you can, and then when you're at that stage, you try and reset the breaker. If it holds, then you know that you've disconnected the fault. If it was to continue to operate, then the fault is still in the circuit, and at that stage you're going to need to speak to an electrician or somebody who's competent in finding that fault for you, which by definition is also an electrician. If it has disconnected the problem, the first thing you could try is to repower all of the switch fuse spares you'd turned off. So get your alarms back on, your washing machines, dishwashers that are integrated, fridge freezers, etc. and see if it still holds. And if it does, that's happy days, because it's going to be something that's on a plug top, so a little bit easier to find. And then it's a case of just going, plug the equipment back in, and wait to see which one of the culprits operated the circuit breaker, or RCBO in this case, because we're looking at earth leakage. If it doesn't then trip when you plug it back in, it's probably something in the electronics of some DC equipment, and just turning it off for that period of time has allowed the electronics to cool, for example, so the fault might not present again immediately. So that's where it starts to get a little bit tricky, and a bit more patience is involved through that fault finding process again, where you wait a little bit of time on each piece of equipment you're plugging in to try and find it. I mean, usually it's quite apparent fairly quickly. You get to the piece of faulty equipment and the RCB will operate again. And as I said, if you can't get to the bottom of it through that means, then you need to be speaking with an electrician. This is just basic user checks whilst keeping yourself safe, because the last thing we want is to be connecting faulty equipment unnecessarily back into the electrical system. So, I mean, I hope that's useful. That's just on an RCBO board. Just to quickly cover the split load boards, it's a similar principle, but you'll see that you have a big isolator switch, so it'll be this size, but it'll have a grey lever on the front and with a yellow test button normally, and they look after a bank of circuit breakers that look like these but minus the test button. And in that case the fault's a little bit harder to find because each RCD looks after a bank of circuits, so you'll find 5 circuits after it. It could be, for example, the cooker, the lights, a socket circuit and a boiler on one, for example, and on another you might have a different branch of sockets, the shower, and a different branch of lights, and perhaps the hot tub supply or a garage supply. It's just a little bit harder to trace the earth fault because obviously you've got more equipment connected back into that RCD. So in that case, you would, with the RCD off, turn the branch of circuit breakers off immediately after it, then restore the power onto the RCD and see if it holds. If it does, then turn the individual circuit breakers on one at a time to try and find which one contains the earth fault. If the RCD is still operating, then it's a neutral earth fault on any of those circuits. So it would be again a case of whatever they are, try and disconnect as much equipment as you can across all of them. So if it's the lights, for example, that are downstairs, go and make sure they're all switched off. You may be lucky and have some sort of double pole isolation on a lighting circuit. It's highly unlikely, but you never know. Again, any socket circuits that are on that, unplug everything. If you've got an isolator for the shower, make sure it's off. Same for the cooker and oven. Anything you can, turn into the off position open circuit and see if you can then restore power to the RCD. If you can't, that's at that stage you need to be speaking with an electrician once you've done all the other basic checks for water ingress into things. It's usually, I mean, for an RCD to start operate randomly, it's normally down to a piece of connected equipment or water getting in somewhere, insects, rodent damage. It's not impossible for you to have an issue in the fixed wiring. You do see nicked insulation in the back of socket outlets, for example, and light switches. It could be that somebody's put a nail or a screw in somewhere. There's all sorts of causes, but these are just some basic checks you can do to try and remedy the issue without getting an electrician out. So I hope you found that useful, and if you're struggling to reset your RCDs, always consult the services of a professional electrician once you've gone through the basic test and check procedure. And certainly if you're in the East Yorkshire area, we'd be more than happy to help Power Sonic, so look us up and get in touch. Hope you found that useful. Thank you for watching. So hope you enjoyed that video. It was a good run through of how to find an earth fault problem on a circuit, both with an RCBO or with a main RCD switch. And if you are having difficulties, please remember, once you've gone through the basics, always consult with a proper electrician and pass the job on to them. But it is worthwhile running through that little procedure just to see if you can suss out what's going on. And yeah, hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe to the channel. And yeah, thanks for watching.